Thank you, Madam President. I rise to discuss the promotions and appointments of general and flag officers in the United States military, including several appointments to lieutenant general and vice admiral. These are officers who would hold positions of particular importance and responsibility to the nation. The promotions of these military leaders were reported out of the Armed Services Committee over the past 2 months. There have been no substantive objections raised against these nominations. For the benefit of my colleagues who may not appreciate the nature and volume of military promotions and nominations considered by the Armed Services Committee, last year the committee considered and the Senate confirmed nearly 20,000 military officers, including 656 general and flag officers. The Senate confirmed 20,000 nominations through bipartisan, unanimous consent because the tradition of the committee and of the Senate is to consider military nominations as apolitical and thus process them in a timely and respectful manner so our troops do not experience delays in their promotion or appointment or in their pay and benefits. Moreover, the sheer volume of nominations we consider means we cannot subject them to the ordinary political gamesmanship we see with civilian nominations. The senior senator from Alabama has made these promotions a political matter. He, and he alone, placed a blanket hold on these officers unrelated to their qualifications because of a policy disagreement with the administration that these officers played no part in deciding. This, in my view, is a profound assault on the professionalism and the men and women of the armed services. The vast majority of these officers were selected by promotion boards, which are panels of military officers who decide the promotion purely on merit, considering the skill, talent, and the military's collective assessment of their potential to lead in the grades for which they have been nominated. Blanket political holds on military officers in an attempt to overturn a civilian policy decision sets a dangerous trend for our military, our political process, our nation, and this Senate. The senior senator from Alabama placed his hold on February 16th, and as a result, not a single general or flag officer nominated in this Congress has been confirmed. Let me repeat that. Due to the senior senator from Alabama's hold, not a single general or flag officer has been promoted. As the senator's hold moves into its 3rd month, we will quickly reach a critical mass of backlog nominations if we are not already there. That will imperil our national security, degrade unit readiness, and place undue and undeserved hardships on military families. It may not be his intent, but he is effectively accomplishing what our adversaries could only dream of, denying our military of its leadership and degrading our ability to fight and win the nation's wars. The bottom line is that military promotions are not a political matter, and they are not toys for political games, and military officers are not tokens in such a game. They are not hostages to issues that are determined by civilian authorities. An administration's civilian nominees may be fair game, and they have been repeatedly, but not professional military officers. That has long been the committee's and the Senate's tradition and practice. And I want to turn to some specific claims made by the senator from Alabama. He has asserted a number of times that the department changed the law or that DOD somehow lacked authority. That simply isn't true. To be clear, under its new policy, and this is with respect to reproductive rights for female soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, the Department of Defense will provide administrative leave and paid travel if a member of the military or the dependent is stationed in a state or country that does not provide the health care needed. The department has broad statutory authority to provide travel benefits to service members and their dependents and it does so routinely, including for the provision of health services. I'm not aware of any assertion from anyone knowledgeable of the law and of the department's actions that the department does not have the authority to do this. Indeed, to the best of my knowledge, no serious lawyer has made this argument, and there's not been a single lawsuit filed on this matter. These policies are against travel and administration leave policies alone. They do not violate the federal prohibition on DoD paying for non-covered reproductive health services. Such reproductive health services will still be paid for by members and dependents out of their own pockets. These policies merely facilitate the provision of health services for service members and dependents who may be stationed in an area that does not provide the needed health services, including overseas locations. Further, the senior senator from Alabama has publicly stated, and I quote, "If Democrats are so worried about the nominations, well, then they can bring them up for a vote. We have more than enough time to vote on nominees." Setting aside the deeply troubling implication that the certain members of the Republican Party do not care enough about our national defense to ensure that senior military leaders are in place in a timely manner, it would take several months of constant attention on this floor just to move through the current batch of general and flag officers that are presently on the Senate calendar. And this is not even accounting for all the nominations still to come. If we took this path, this Senate would be consumed entirely by nominating and confirming military officers ad infinitum, unable to do anything else. And Madam President, there are currently 184 general and flag officers, including 11 to be promoted to lieutenant general or vice admiral, subject to these political holds. And let me highlight just 3 to show you the impact and the consequences of these holds. One nominee is nominated to be the commander of the Navy's 7th Fleet. It's the largest of the Navy's 4 deployed fleets and has responsibility for the Indo-Pacific area of operations. And I hear constantly in the committee and elsewhere on the floor, the Chinese threat, we've got to do more. We just listened to a long diatribe about TikTok and how dangerous it is. I think what might be more dangerous is not having a confirmed leader for this fleet in the Pacific able to move out immediately to any type of threat coming from the Chinese. In addition, the commander of the Navy's 5th Fleet, that's responsible for the naval and combined maritime forces in the Indian Ocean, Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, and it's under the overall command of U.S. Central Command. And we hear every day, we heard it just recently, about how the Iranians are taking advantage of us. We are not responding strongly enough. Well, how well will our response be if we're not quite sure who the commander of this fleet is? We've got a nominee, but it's not confirmed. We have an officer that may have to leave for another assignment. This causes readiness problems, morale problems, and undermines the military that we all stand around here and suggest is our primary concern. Another one, the U.S. military representative to NATO, who is the senior uniformed representative to NATO during a time when NATO is critical to our support of Ukraine in its war against Russia. And again, my colleagues will stand up and say, we've got to do more for the Ukraine. We have to make sure they get the resources. We have to coordinate NATO. We have to do all these things. But we really don't need anyone in Brussels to help in military advice and assistance. We'll just ignore that. These are just 3 examples. And I'd like to look ahead because this is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Within the next 8 months, we expect the department to nominate approximately 650 general and flag officers, including 83 or 4-star nominees. all of whom will come through the Armed Services Committee and require Senate confirmation. These include the nomination of the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. By law, General Milley will retire in September. If this hold persists, then we will be without a Chief of Staff of the United States, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, rather. We also expect nominations for the service chiefs of the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. The Chief of Staff of the Army, the CNO in the Navy, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps are scheduled to retire. If this hold persists, we will not have leadership in the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. And that would be devastating to readiness, to morale, to the whole history of our government, in which we moved nominees based on merit, not as political hostages. We're also talking about major combat commands. Cyber command. Does anyone have to talk about the relevance of cyber command? Again, we just listened to a long discussion about cyber security and the stealing of information and governmental interference with that. Cyber command is the key actor from the Department of Defense standpoint in all of those efforts. And frankly, without a cyber commander, I think the TikTok issue sort of diminishes in importance. We also have SpaceCom and NORTHCOM. They're responsible for the defense of the United States, so that we do not find ourselves here at home devastated by any type of attack, which today includes cyber, missile, hypersonics, all those possibilities. There's also 3 deputy commanders that are coming up: Cybercom, CENTCOM, and AFRICOM. So what you can see is that this policy continues, or this practice continues, we're wiping out the leadership of the Department of Defense and doing an extraordinary disservice to the men and women that wear the uniform of the United States. We've always treated military nominations appropriately, as beyond the political fray, and we must continue to do so for the good of the service and all those who take the oath, and their families too, because no military member serves alone. The family serves with him or her. Now, I believe in a very strong military based on constitutional professional values. We must not inject political theater into this process. If we do not have a coherent, organized leadership and the Department of Defense, then we're putting our troops at risk. That's quite simple. And to me, it's unacceptable. With that, Madam, I would ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the following nominations in block: calendars number 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107. That the nominations be confirmed en bloc, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, and no further motions be in order to any of the nominations, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Is there